introduce my co-host and fellow colleague for today, Dr. Arooj Shahid. She is a graduate of University of Lahore, and after completing her MBBS, she has done multiple courses in ultrasound and reproductive medicine. Today, she is going to be the moderator for ART Hands-On Workshop. Please, Dr. Arooj Shahid, come on stage and proceed further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anam. Good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all on the behalf of Australian Concept Team, Fertility Vision Conference 2024. Today we are going to conduct complete assisted reproductive techniques, demonstrations and hands-on workshop. This is going to be very informative and very interesting session for all you guys. So we will be having scientific sessions, panel discussion, entertaining musical event and lucky draw. So now I would like to call Dr. Maria Ahmed. She is a consultant gynecologist. She was trained in UK, but she has been working in Lahore for the last 10 years. She has special interest in infertility. She obtained her membership of RCOG in 2010 and she was made a fellow of RCOG in 2023 in a view of her dedication and services to her specialty. She is a trainer, a supervisor, an examiner and a member of Concept Fertility Center for more than 8 years now. Today her topic of presentation is on assisted reproductive techniques, so I would like to call Dr. Maria Ahmed on stage. Please come and proceed further.
Thank you, Arooj. Assalamualaikum and good morning. Very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Australian Concept Fertility Center. This is just going to be a brief introduction to assisted reproductive techniques. What I'll try and do is go through a basic process just before we go on to our hands-on workshop. So, and you can ask us as many questions on the tables when we go there, and if you have any confusions. So, I keep telling patients that there are only 3 treatments that we can offer: ovulation induction, IUI and IVF or ICSI. So when they come to us, usually they've had ovulation inductions. And the reason for today's workshop is to make you guys a bit more empowered to performing IUI and then obviously know a bit about IVF. So if you refer to center, you know what is happening with your patient. I would like to thank Galaxy Pharma for helping us arrange this workshop. So why use assisted reproductive techniques? So I'm sure when you're practicing, you're coming across the reasons for infertility, which sometimes become very difficult to manage in your jurisdiction. So tubal infertility, we know that's why IVF came into being. Male infertility, unexplained ovulatory disorders, especially the resistance PCOS that you have treated and it's not helping, and then obviously age-related fertility declines. It's not uncommon now, especially in Lahore, for women to get married a bit late and then realize that they're just missing the fertility window. So that's when the time doesn't matter, how long you have been married for, the age of the woman matters. IUI, simple procedure, involves the placement of processed semen into the cavity around the time of ovulation. What it does is it increases the rate of conception by increasing the chance that maximizes the number of healthy sperms reaching the site of fertilization. I've put in some indications for IUI, unexplained infertility. So NICE used to recommend that if you've had a sperm count above 10 million and an unexplained infertility, this is the treatment you may consider. They have moved forward a bit, going towards assisted reproductive early on. But in our setup, in our under-resourced setup, I think unexplained infertility initially can be treated with IUI, followed by female factors, mild endometriosis, cervical mucus issues, and ovulatory dysfunctions. We do get couples where males suffer from erectile dysfunction and people have difficulty having coitus, and that's the type of couples also we consider IUI issues. Just a reminder, I'm sure all of you are aware, we do not do IUI in block tubes or even in Pashi. There's always a debate, but tube is tube is a highly specialized organ, and actually my talk later today is on that too. But we need to know if the tubes are patent, and before moving from ovulation induction to IUI, it's always worth considering tubal testing. We obviously don't do ovarian failure. If there's severe male factor or the age of the woman is reaching 40 or above 40. What's the advantage? Very simple, cost effective. People have got no qualms about going to IUI. They think it's as natural as possible, and they, whatever myths they have about assisted reproductive techniques don't come into IUI. That's mostly on IVF or ICSI. Disadvantages, not that great a success rate, but better than no success. Obviously, less information on patients' fertility journey is obtained. A lot more information is obtained on the IVF cycle. We need at least one healthy fallopian tube and reasonable sperm parameters to proceed towards IUI. You have to select your patient very carefully, counsel them, and then ovulation induction. Hardly I've done IUIs on natural cycle. It's different scenarios. Generally, all of us tend to do IUIs in stimulated cycle. So stimulation is that you do day in, day out. You can use, your agent of choice, clomiphene, letrozole, and the only thing is that you follow that ovulation, and when you think that the follicle is ready and the size, you achieve a reasonable size with a good endometrial thickness, you then give an HCG trigger, and then semen collection, semen preparation, and insemination. Whatever agent you are using, and if you are using especially gonadotropins, then it's worth monitoring for ovarian hyperstimulation. You do anticipate multiple pregnancy and warn the patient, although they love it, they think it's the best. Babies milling, not knowing the risk of multiple pregnancy. And once you have triggered with it, if you're happy with the follicle size and endometrial thickness, remember they go hand in hand. So although the book suggests follicle size of 1.8 to 2.2, it's also the endometrial thickness that you look at, and it's around, if it's 8 millimeter or above, that's the time we tend to trigger generally. So for the male, we do advise them to have a 2 to 3 days abstinence on the day they have to give the sample, and then we prepare. The embryologist actually prepares the semen sample, Swimmer method, density gradient. I think generally we use density gradient, and we will talk a little bit about these on the station. So then inseminating it is not at all any problems for all the gynecologists or gynecologists who do, evacuations, DNCs. They know this is simplest procedure. What you have to make sure is not to, hoping not to have any uterine contraction while you are inseminating. Do it smoothly, let them rest for 10 to 15 minutes. And I would like to add that sometimes we do tell them the further days to use, but double insemination, although NICE guideline does not suggest it, it's not recommended, but in patients with physical issues or ED, we do sometimes end up having double insemination. But it's a very individualized treatment, so you have to decide, but generally it's a single insemination at the time that you have decided, between 24 to 40 minutes. 24 to 40 hours after HCG trigger. Success obviously depends on what type of patient you have selected. So if it's a young age, good ovarian reserve, good response, mild pain factor, and overall generally a good couple, then yes, good success rates, 10 to 20% per cycle for women under the age of 35. Moving on briefly towards IVF, it involves fertilizing egg outside the body and transferring embryos into the uterus. Obviously more complex, more information is gathered, and success rate is more than IUI. So as I said, it's for tubal infertility, but obviously also for severe male factor, endometriosis or fibroids, age-related decline, and unexplained infertility. I'd probably spend a little bit more time on this slide. So pre-treatment can range from just giving folic acid. There's some evidence from recent Cochrane database that antioxidants may help, to really highly specialized treatment, like for example in endometriosis, they suggest if you give GnRH agonist 3 to 6 months prior to IVF, then that increases the clinical pregnancy rate up to 4-fold. So the pre-treatment can vary and can take time and can be very simple to complex. Then we do pituitary downregulation, and the reason for that is obviously we are trying to suppress the endogenous gonadotrophin. So the lady's own FSH-LH is suppressed so that we don't get premature ovulation and we get follicles that we can then have, collect at the time of pickup. Downregulation is done both by agonist and antagonist, and we will discuss this in the cycle. Then is controlled ovarian hyperstimulation. So once you have done the suppression of the lady's own FSH and LH, then you give exogenous gonadotropin in the form of recombinant FSH if you are lucky enough to have that, or human menopausal gonadotropin. And you do monitor that to make sure that it's not going towards hyperstimulation. Once you're happy with the size of the follicles, then you give the maturation trigger, which has to mimic the LH surge. So it can be the HCG in the agonist cycle, and it can be an agonist in the antagonist cycle. Then we do the pickup and sperm retrieval, which can be through giving a sample or biopsy, or we'll discuss this as well. Then comes the role of embryologist, the main, so IVF or ICSI, and mostly we are doing intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Then we check the fertilization 17 to 24 hours after to check for the two polar bodies. The embryos that we monitor them intermittently, day 3 and day 5. We put them back on day 5, hopefully the good blastocysts sometimes go on all freeze, and then is the luteal support that we know is supposed to increase the clinical pregnancy rate. So almost the same steps I've taken you through, and we will probably discuss these steps again on hands-on workshop. So this is, I've just simplified it. It's for those who are interested, but just to know the basics, that the second or third day, so this is the antagonist protocol. And generally we have moved towards antagonist because this protocol has less risk of ovarian hyperstimulation and is pretty cost effective. On day 2, 3 of a period, that's usually day 1 of the dose, you make sure that her periods have started, she's in a suppressed state, and we start the dosing of the FSH. I put in a standard dose of 2 to 5, but actually this dose is quite individualized depending on her age, BMI, and ovarian reserve. And then usually every center has their own protocol about checking on the follicle development, and usually antagonist is added either at day 6 in some of the fixed protocols, or when the follicle size reaches 1.4 centimeter. And then on the day of trigger, you usually trigger with an agonist or dual trigger, and then you go for the pickup. In an agonist protocol is usually a long protocol. So instead of starting on the second day of period, it starts 7 days preceding the period when you start a GnRH agonist. And what that is doing is, that is initially releasing all the FSH-LH of the woman, and then that down-regulates. So initially a surge happens, and then FSH-LH nahi hote uske apne. So then we start giving, usually on day 2 of the period, we check for the suppression, and then we start our own gonadotrophins, and again regular checkups, and then in this cycle we usually trigger mimicking LH surge with HCG. And then we do 35 to 36 hours of trigger short transvaginal overpickup is done under anesthesia. Then is fertilization by the lab, and as I said, sperm at the same day is collected by urologists, and sometimes if it's severe male factor, we do have frozen samples as backups. After fertilization, embryos are cultured in lab for 3 to 5 days, and embryo transfer is done with a specialized catheter depending on the quality of embryo and patient's condition. So you can do a fresh embryo transfer or a frozen embryo transfer. Key differences, obviously, IUI is, as I said, patient conceive it as more natural, and probably it is a bit. It doesn't involve a specialized lab needed for IVF. It's less complex, minimally invasive, but generally low success rate. IVF, egg fertilized in a lab, you get a lot more information about the quality of eggs that you retrieve, the sperm that you deal with, more complicated, requires expertise for HC, more expensive of course, but success rate is higher. So they are both valuable options. Actually, we don't have many. We have ovulation induction followed by these two. And then each technique has its own set of benefits, risk and cost, and you have to cater to individual patients. And success depends on patients and the treatment that you offer them. Thank you very much for listening. So this was just a brief introduction, and we would like now to, I think coordinators will tell you about going towards the station, where we'll be happy to answer all my consultant colleagues as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria, for a wonderful presentation.